Wonderful. Well, good morning. Great to have you all back with us. We're shooting another episode of Let's Talk with Laurie Lehman. And this is going to be part of Let's Talk the Miraculous. And Laurie has really got an incredible story. We've tried to get this recorded, I think you said 3 times before. This is the fourth time. This is the fourth time. And so instead of saying 3 is a charm, we're going to say 4th time's a charm.
Yep.
And we really are hoping that this is going to work, you know. And so, like I said, Laurie, I think you've got an incredible testimony. I've often said, for me, I think it's one of the most powerful testimonies of miracles I've ever heard in my life, you know. So you've been part of Redemption City Church now for about 4 or 5 years, I guess.
4 years,
because it was soon after we took over the leadership that you guys came in. So just tell us a little bit about that. How did you find Redemption City? How did you come to be with us?
Well, in 2015, I was put on the transplant list, and I think in 2016 our boys started playing basketball together.
Yeah, that's right.
And we had found out some time before we visited the church that you were a pastor, and so we thought, well, we'll go visit. We weren't really looking for a church, but we thought, well, we need to go visit, and so that was kind of just our intention, was just to visit and maybe not stay necessarily, but like I said, I was on the transplant list, and I had just been given just a few months before that about a year to live.
Wow.
And so I was in a really dark time in my life, and that first visit, you were preaching on Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. And I had heard that verse before many times, but that day I had something change in my soul.
Wow.
And I think I realized that, well, one, that you were supposed to be walking through the valley, not staying in it, and I was staying in it. And that you were to fear no evil, but I was gripped with fear because of my situation. And I just believed that he was showing me that he would walk me through it, and he would get me through, and that he would take away my fear. And I just had a complete change happen that day. So we've been at Redemption ever since.
Yeah, that's right. And so, I mean, just go back to that. I mean, you a couple of months before, the doctors have given you a year to live.
Yeah.
And so you're already a couple of months into that prognosis, right? So, yeah. I mean, obviously it's a very emotional thing for you, you know, but just tell us some of the, I mean, what does somebody do in that situation? I mean, what were you doing? How were you preparing yourself? How were you preparing your family? Just some of those kind of things, you know.
Well, my daughter is the youngest of our 4 children, and so I really felt like I leaned on her because she was a girl. We have 3 boys, and then she was the girl. I was leaning on her and trying to teach her things and show her things that if I weren't there, I kept saying that I wanted her to know this and this. And I was making quilts for my grandbabies and things that I could leave behind for them. My mom died at 48, and I was 48 that year. And I was 10 years into the disease. And so that's where she was when she died. And so I really felt that my fate was the same.
So, I mean, just some, I think the doctors had told you not to have any more kids, is that right?
Yeah, so in 2002 is when I was diagnosed with the heart condition, and I was pregnant with Taylor at the time.
Okay. You were already pregnant with her.
I was pregnant with her. And so that's a whole nother story in itself. But I made it through the pregnancy by the grace of God. And they put the pacemaker in after she was born. And I did fairly well for the first 10 years. And then in about 2012 is when I really started to have a lot of issues with arrhythmias. I had congestive heart failure. I had a dilated cardiomyopathy, which is a disease of the heart tissue, and it deteriorates the heart muscle. And so you lose your conductivity, and your heart cannot function. And so it spreads almost like a cancer. And so at that time, I was in atrial standstill, and the whole top part of my heart was dead, and I was in standstill. And so my atriums weren't functioning. I thankfully still had ventricular function, but the disease was spreading to my ventricles at that time.
And so what is that like physically? I mean, what could you do? What couldn't you do?
Well, by probably 2014, I spent most of my days in bed. I had just a crushing headache every day, chest pain, dizziness, nausea. I was really short of breath. I had to make really slow movements if I did get up and move, because my heart rate wouldn't go over 58. I had passed out several times, so I knew that if I moved too quickly that I would, just fall over. And so I spent most of my days in bed, and if I had to go somewhere where I knew I, couldn't just walk in the door, then I was in a wheelchair to be pushed everywhere. So.
Yeah. So I mean, as you said, our boys were playing basketball together, and I know Blaze had come home and said, Garen's mom's real sick. She's in a wheelchair. And I couldn't figure out what that was. And I mean, we didn't really know each other then. That was, like we said, pre you coming to Redemption City Church.
Yeah.
But I guess in some way that was always in the back of our mind. Every time we thought of you, gee, I hope she's okay, praying for you guys, praying, but not to be completely honest, not understanding in any way, shape, or form the seriousness of what you were going through. You know what I'm saying? And
I don't think most people knew. It was such a complex thing that I was living through that I don't think most people knew or understood. A few close friends really understood what I was going through.
And so I've heard you say on occasion that you felt like you were living with a death sentence.
I was, yeah.
It felt like there was a kind of like an end date, and the clock was ticking towards that thing. And so,
I think I had given in to that, accepted it for a while. In my darkest times, I think I just gave in to the fear, and I accepted that, my mom didn't get to live a full life, then why should I?
And is that a genetic thing? Is it something that you got from your mom?
Yes, it's we've had hundreds of people throughout the generations that have died, and most people didn't live to be 50. So that always...
I'm not going to ask you how old you are. Not 48.
Not 48. I'm 50-something.
There we go. I'll take that. I'm also 50-something, about to be 60-something. But, and I guess part of that is, right, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but when the doctors are telling you you've got a year to live, you're on the heart transplant list. At what time do they put you on the heart transplant list? When they give you that year to live?
No, I had been on the transplant list at that point for about a half a year.
Okay.
And so the reason they were saying that is because they did an ultrasound every year to compare the heart function. And so in November of 15 is when they compared that to November of 14.
Okay.
And then that's when he gave me that year to live. He said that I had had a significant change in my heart function, and
for the worse.
And it was irreversible. There was nothing they could do medically. That's, I had went through at one point, I had 38 surgeries within about 12 months.
Wow.
And so they had determined that there was absolutely no medical means that they could do to help me. And that was the reason that you get put on the transplant list. It's very difficult screening process that you have to go through to even be put on the list.
But the thing of you saying you live under a death sentence is if effectively there's a waiting list and there's an expected time period on that, and I don't know what that is, you know. But what they giving you as a prognosis is short of that, right?
Yeah. The other difficult part of that is that because of my blood type and my body size, that they didn't feel. One time they said that finding me a heart would be a needle in a haystack. So I really had lost all hope in the doctors, you know, and in whether or not I would even get a transplant list. So when he said that I had a year to live, I really had no hope that they would find me a heart. So.
And so then you come to redemption on that was a Sunday morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you feel something change spiritually for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to say from my side, but again, correct me if I'm wrong, you come back that night, right? We were doing a worship evening that night.
Yeah.
Worship and just ministry, something we did like once a month called Deeper. And you came back for that. And I can remember just feeling in God, maybe these people here that are needing healing.
Yeah.
And saying, is there anybody here that needs healing, you know? And you put your hand up. Again, like I said, I had no understanding of the seriousness of your condition and what was going on.
Yeah.
But I can remember your hand going up. And, you know, it's like, I don't know if you've got a head cold.
Right.
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And at that time, there was just a bunch of young people in the life of the church. And I guess through the relationship with our boys, there's a bunch of those young people that kind of flood around you and start praying for you. So,
yeah, it was a unique time because there was a bunch of young people that I knew, all friends of our boys. And it was a really unique time in the church that we knew so many people. But I guess just days before that night, Logan had came to me one morning. He was home for his own, a medical need. He had to come home from college and he was struggling, and we were both reading through the Gospels, and he came up one day and he said, "Mom, do you believe that miracles are for today?" And I said, "Absolutely, I do." And he said, "Well, I don't know if this is even possible, but I felt like when I was praying for you that you needed to stop taking your medications." And I was just kind of stunned by what he said. And I thought, wow, I don't know if that's possible. And so I said, "Well, I'll pray about it. I don't know." And so a few more days goes by, and I had two people in my life, my father-in-law and a really good friend of mine that I'd done Bible study with for years, that both told me that I was not going to need a transplant, that God was going to heal me.
Wow.
And so I had this happen with Logan that tells me to stop taking my medications. And I was in congestive heart failure. I was gaining about 10 pounds of fluid a day. Wow. And so it would be life-threatening for me to stop my medications. And so I prayed about it. And that night, my heart rate had never went over 58. I had a monitor by my bed. I could check my heart rate all the time. I knew what it was. I, had a wrist heart monitor that I looked at all the time. And anyway, I just decided that I have to give this to God. There's no way I can do this on my own. And I need a sign. And so I asked for a sign. And I just said, "Lord, my heart rate hasn't gone over 58. And so I need you to show me in my heart rate that you're going to heal me and that you're okay with me stopping this medication because it's life-threatening for me to do so." And so, I waited for some time, really not knowing what I was asking. I didn't even really know if it was okay to ask that. I was not a new believer, but I was fairly new in my Christian walk. And really miracles were something new to me. And so anyway, I waited for a while. I took my blood pressure and my heart rate was 63.
Wow.
And I just went, wow, okay, I got it, Lord.
Wow.
So I'm going to do this. And so the next day I didn't take my medication that night. I woke up the next day with 10 pounds of fluid. And I just began just praying just for my heart and my kidneys and everything to function. And I don't remember if it was that day or the day after, but Logan came up one morning after reading in the Bible and he said, "I don't quite know how to do this, but I need to pray for your healing." And he took me, and this was a child that I had never heard pray out loud, so this was like, wow. So he puts a hand on my front and on the back, and he starts praying for me. And I immediately felt this warmth from the front to the back. And I think I was just in shock and awe. I really didn't know what was going on. And I didn't feel any different afterwards, but I felt that heat in my heart then for a few days.
Wow.
And then now this is up to where the meeting was at church. And when you asked if anyone needed healing. So I had been feeling this warmth in my heart, kind of changing directions in my heart. It was kind of moving along. But it was constant. And so that night then I was surrounded by the church and by Sandy and several people I knew, several of the elders and several of the kids I knew. And they all had their hands on me. And I just felt this heat, almost like a boiling sensation from my waist all the way up to my head and down my arms. And I guess I really didn't know what was going on, to be honest. Like I said, miracles I knew could happen, but it was new for me. I didn't know anyone who had had a miracle. So.
Like that's the thing, right? Miracles happen to other people.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like cool to read about this story, or read about that, or read about that in the Bible. This is real time, and it's your real life, and there's a real kind of, for want of a better word, like you said, a death sentence. There's a real threat of death on you.
Yes.
And then these things start to happen. And I mean, you've said before it was a process. Your healing was a process rather than a one-time thing. So
that was over the course of, so then that's over the course of maybe 5 days, from the start to me not taking my medications, praying through all of that.
I mean, again, we don't know any of this, right?
No.
I don't know any
No, you didn't know any of it. No. We were kind of acquaintances through basketball, but it wasn't enough for me to go, hey. So one of the things I did want to share is, which I do think was just this pivotal moment in my life, was I had read in the Gospels about the woman who had the blood disorder. And she just knew that if she touched Jesus's robe, that she would be healed. And, there's several accounts in the Gospel of that story. And I just kept reading that story over and over. And during those days, I just remember crying out to Jesus and just saying, you could walk in my living room and I could touch your robe, I know I would be healed.
Wow. Incredible. Eh? So does the process continue from there? Is there more prayer, more?
Yeah, just daily prayer. I was battling with the fluid. I really wasn't getting any relief. It was kind of collecting. And we get to the Sunday night prayer meeting when the kids and everybody had prayed for me. And I went home, and the next day actually when I left there, I knew something had changed. I had been living with just terrible symptoms, just like I said, the crushing headache and it felt like something was on my chest all the time and that I couldn't get a full breath. And I all of a sudden could get a deep breath, and I didn't feel any weight on my chest, and I wasn't dizzy or nauseous or any of the other symptoms. And I felt like I had this energy like I hadn't felt in over 10 years.
Wow.
And so that was that ever since then, I've been the same.
Wow. So. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so then what does that look like? I mean, what do you start doing then? I mean, do you go back to your doctors? Do they run any tests? What is the process from there? Do you wait a couple of weeks?
No, I at that point I was going in weekly, because when you're on the transplant list, you go in once a week. And so I went in my first day, and I'm normally in a wheelchair, and I normally have dark circles under my eyes, and I'm real pale. And my nurse knew me because I had been in there so long, and she calls my name, and I'm standing and right here, and she overlooks me, and she didn't recognize me.
Wow.
And I said, I'm right here. And she goes, oh my gosh, what happened to you? So I wasn't in. She says, where's your chair? Are you going to walk? And I said, yeah, I've got a story for you. And so, so I told the transplant doctor that I wanted to be taken off the list, and he was in absolute shock. I mean, here I was the week before, having lots of issues.
You don't wait weeks or months to see if this is going to stick,
it was
right?
immediate.
I mean, you go in a few days later, you're like, I'm done.
Yeah, and he's like, whoa, wait up. I'm going to keep you on the list. I go, no, I don't want to be active on the list. I'm not. If I get a call tomorrow, I'm not going to get a transplant.
Lori Lehman.
And he said,
I'm so glad I didn't know all this. Yeah. Now I'm glad I didn't know all of this.
Yeah.
You're scaring me right now.
Well, he was so flustered, he went out and almost hit the door and went out in the hallway and turned around, and had to leave and come back. He didn't really know what to say to me. And he came back in and he said, I want to keep you on the transplant list and you can go inactive. It's your choice to be inactive, but I don't think that's the right thing. Let's give it 30 days.
Yeah.
I'll see you next week. And I said, I'm not coming in next week. So I'll see you next month in the 30 days. But I'm good. And at that point, I knew I was healed. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew because of my symptoms. I didn't have any symptoms. Zero.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so do they run any tests on you? And are the tests different?
Well, unfortunately, because of insurance and the way that it is, they can't run in tests on you if you're feeling good. So I had to wait until I needed another ultrasound, in which I had to wait 2 years to have an ultrasound. But yeah, so they really couldn't. I mean, he listened to my heart. That was the other thing that happened is I eventually shut off that extra fluid weight, and I wasn't retaining any fluid anymore. That was the other thing I had to tell him is I hadn't been taking my medication for a week at that point, and it was just too much for him to understand. But he was upset with me for doing that. But I knew in my heart that it was a miracle and that it wasn't going to change. So
that's absolutely incredible. And so how does because I asked you physically, what could you do, what couldn't you do? And so right from that point, you feel like you've got your life back. You can do stuff again. And
yeah, I was running and jumping. My kids were in shock. My husband was looking at me like something was wrong. And like I had lost every ounce of my brain, but I couldn't explain what I was feeling inside, but it was like I really had not felt that way in over 10 years. So it was just a complete change. So.
That's wild. I mean, I can remember talking to you, I think it was a couple of weeks later, and you going, I'm back in gym and working out. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I joined the gym. Yeah. Everybody thought I was absolutely crazy, but I was like, no, when your life has been on hold for so many years and you feel like you've got it back, you're going to take advantage of every day. So I wasn't going to wait. Yeah.
That is absolutely incredible. And so where are you now? I mean, how do you feel now?
I feel amazing. I feel the same as I did 4 years ago. I've had no changes. I haven't had any arrhythmias, which is very unusual. I was having arrhythmias all the time and had been for years, 7 years in a row. My heart rate is normal. When I exercise, it gets up to 140.
Wow.
So I'm not on any medications. I haven't been for 4 years. I'm not retaining any fluid. I have
You got absolutely zero symptoms.
Zero symptoms.
From what you had before?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
And so you said that was a degenerative heart condition, right? I mean, it actually just gets worse.
It's irreversible. Yeah.
It's irreversible. It just physically gets worse, right?
Yeah.
Like the muscles are weakening or hardening. What is going on there? Just weakening?
Yeah, it's like a muscular dystrophy of the heart. Wow. And so it's just this, I was shown a picture of my heart, and it's like someone who's, at the time I was 48, my heart looked like I was 100 years old. It was shriveled and small and, very abnormal in size because the muscle just deteriorates. So.
Wow. And so there's this period of healing, right? Over this 5 days, 7 days or whatever, from Logan praying for you, from you going off your medication to the Sunday night. And then it's, it's
done.
I'm struggling to find words to ask you the right questions. I really am. I mean, it's like, if we didn't know you and know that, we would go, that's unbelievable. But it has to be believable, because
I wish I had been at the church for longer, for people there to see, how, what condition I was in.
But like, so from that time, I mean, I feel like I'm just asking stupid questions at this point.
No.
But it's like, so there's that point of healing, and then so after that Sunday night, you go back to the doctor, and it's like it's like it doesn't feel like your heart ramped back up. I don't even know if I'm asking the right question. You know what I mean? It feels like something happened there over that 5 days, 7 days, whatever that period was, and.
Yeah, I believe that
at that
heat,
point, your heart is completely normal. So instead of having a 100-year-old heart, you've got a 48-year-old heart again, maybe even a 24-year-old heart. Who even knows now?
I don't even know. Yeah, I can't explain it. I just know that the heat that I was feeling moving through my heart, now I feel like that it was spending about a day or so in each chamber is what I felt. Now looking back on it, I could feel it kind of moving from place to place. And when it was done, it was done. And it happened to be the night that all the kids prayed for me, and it was just done at that point. And it had taken over, the course of 5 days. But
I'm dumbstruck. I don't know. Somebody help me with a question for Lord. And I mean, I've heard this a couple of times, right? Like we said, we've tried to record this 3 times, and it's just like it is absolutely mind-boggling, Lori.
It really is.
We are so delighted, and so delighted your family has got their mom back.
Yeah.
Chad's got his wife back.
Yeah. Yeah, we really do. Our life is back to normal, which I mean, even when I go for a walk or do any exercising now, I can't believe it. It's just amazing to me that I can live. I wasn't able to go to the grocery store, vacuum, do things that normal people do every day of their life. Yeah. I spent all my days in bed. And my kids, I'd go to school, and I was in bed. When the kids would go to school, I was in bed. And when they came home, I was in bed. And so that was just my life. And that's where everybody could find me.
And so you said, I just want to pick up as we kind of draw this thing to a close. I'm going to ask you another question, but you made those quilts for your grandkids.
I put them away. I'm going to make new ones.
but you're going to be able to hand them to them.
Yeah.
Isn't that a beautiful thought?
Yeah.
It's like I made these things because I thought I wasn't going to be here, and I wanted my grandkids to have something to remember me by. And now I'm going to be able to put those things in my grandkids' hands myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that, I had certain desires of my heart, and I wanted to see my grandkids. I wanted to see my children get married, and the things that my mom didn't get to see. I wanted to grow old with my husband and spend our years retired, traveling. But when you don't think you're going to get a chance to do any of that, and then you get a second chance, it's really amazing.
What an incredible story, huh?
Yeah.
So delighted for you and your family, man. We really are. Hey? How good is God, man?
Yeah, amazing. I grew up Catholic, and so I think that my feeling or my knowledge of God is that he was just somewhere out there, and that I didn't have a relationship with him. I didn't really know that you could have a relationship with him. And so through all of this, I mean, there's so many things that I learned, but he's a loving and compassionate God. He wants to give you all the desires of your heart. I feel like if you seek him, he will let you find him. Yeah, amazing. And he wants to give you everything that you desire, and he wants to bring miracles and healing to your life. But I think a lot of people put him somewhere out there in a box, and they they don't really know that they can open that door to a relationship with him.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, one of the biggest things I think I learned is that Jesus is alive. He's here today.
Yeah.
And he wants to.
And for a lot of people, that's like conceptual still, right? For you, that's very much a reality.
It's
in the
very
context
real.
Of what you've been through and where you are now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you this, Glory, as we close. You know, I've got a different grace for people that struggle with sickness, because I was sick with diverticulitis for 5 or 6 years, and it's just to be honest with you, it wears on you. You know what I mean? It's not like I got a head cold. I was sick for 3 days or 4 days. Everybody hates that.
Right.
But when you're sick for years, it absolutely wears on you. You know what I mean? And I had the surgery, and I feel tons better as well. God touched you, you feel tons better. But just what would you say to somebody that's in that? You know what I mean? They've got something that's sustained. You know, they've been carrying something for years or months, whatever it is. What would you say to them about? I mean, I just think about that scripture that you mentioned. You know, Psalm 73. It's like we're going through this. We're not in it.
Yeah.
You know. So
that's what I would say. Is just don't stay in that dark place. Don't give in to fear. The enemy wants us to give in to the fear, because that's his intention is to destroy us and to fight, to not lose your fight. But also I feel like just go diving into the scriptures, because God wants to show you who he is through the scriptures. He wants to show you how he can heal, how loving of a God he is, and to just look for him, seek him, and he will find you. And
that's beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks, Laurie. We do so appreciate it, man. It truly. I often tell your story. I tell your story when I travel to other churches and whatever, and I tell your story, and I often say it is one of the most. And I've been saved for 30 plus years. I've been in ministry for almost all of that time, and it's still. Your testimony, your healing testimony, is still one of the most dramatic healing testimonies I've ever heard. You know what I'm saying, or ever been around. And so we tell your story often, and I'm so glad we've brought you back in to be able to tell it again. And hopefully this can encourage other people. You know, if you're struggling with something, man, take courage from Laurie's testimony. Keep trusting God. You know, that Psalm 23, it's we go through it. And that's God's intent for us, is to go through it, not to stay there, not to die in the valley of the shadow of death, but to go through it. And so I want to encourage you, man, reach out if you need prayer. Reach out to us, drop us a line, drop us a text, whatever it is. We'd love to pray for you, but stay encouraged, stay in faith, and we'll talk to you soon. Well done, Laurie. Thank you so much. Thank you.